Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast. Quick picks video for UFC Fight Night. Prates taking on Garry live from Kansas City this Saturday. And as the title says, this is going to be a quick pick, straight to the point video with a confidence level traffic light system at the bottom. For all of my confident picks will be in green. My medium confidence will be in yellow or amber or whatever color you call it, depending on where you're from around the world. And red for my least confident picks. And if you enjoy the short form content and you're fed up of all the long drawn out breakdowns in detail, this video is going to be for you. So hit that like and subscribe button and let's get right into the picks. So first up, we have Jocelyn Edwards taking on Chelsea Chandler. And Chelsea Chandler, when it comes to her particular style of fighting, she likes to bully girls up against the fence and looks to try to use her physically dominant size to get women to the ground and control them on the ground, which we have seen from Jocelyn Edwards has been a weakness in her game. Jocelyn Edwards is the much more complete fighter in this particular matchup. She does have the better striking, and I think that she's going to look to try to keep this one on the feet, where she's going to have a lot of success here against the slower, plodding Chelsea Chandler. And the reason it's only a red confidence pick or very low confidence pick in this particular matchup is because we've seen that the weakness of Edwards is Chelsea Chandler's strength. So I don't necessarily trust her here as a favorite, and it's pretty hard to be confident in Edwards as a favorite here, but I think that she's probably going to win with her striking, keeping this fight on the feet. 29-28 decision here on the judges' scorecards. And next up, we have Roberto Romero taking on Timmy Kawamba. And Timmy Kawamba honestly hasn't shown me that he's UFC level so far. Having a split decision against Balaj Oki in that fight didn't really age well because Bioki hasn't necessarily looked that good inside the UFC so far. And he had a very, very bad loss to Lucas Almeida, where he got dropped multiple times in that particular fight. So 0-2 inside the UFC hasn't necessarily proved himself, whereas Roberto Romero, even though he has lost 0-1 inside the UFC, he did fight David Onama. David Onama fighting later on in this card, a ranked opponent. He did take that fight on short notice against David Onama, and he looked good, especially in the first round. He was able to drop Onama on the feet. He was able to continue to walk forward. There was question marks about his cardio coming into this fight. I just put that down to the fact that that fight was on very short notice. A full training camp here. I have to believe that Romero's going to come in. He's got the skill sets to hang on the feet with Onama. I think he puts a guy like Timmy Kawamba probably out on the feet. I'm going to say that he probably KOs him or maybe even gets him to the ground and submits him here, but I think that he's the guy to pick in this particular matchup. I don't trust Timmy in this matchup. I think Romero is going to be the pick here in a medium level confidence. Obviously, he isn't necessarily tested, but that showing that he did have against David Onama was enough for me to pick him in this particular matchup. Polyana Viana against Jacqueline Amori, and I'm going to go with Amori here. I think that this is definitely a confident pick. I think she gets this fight to the ground, finds a submission like she's done in multiple fights now up until this point. Training at American Top Team, you have to think that she's going to be improving her striking. She's got great training partners, great coaches over at American Top Team in Florida. She looked fantastic in her last fight, getting the armbar against Vanessa Demopoulos, regardless of whether you think that she cheated or not. She's been doing that to multiple women. She's got mostly finishes, I believe all finishes on her record up until this point. Polyana Viana, not necessarily a world beater by any means. She has been submitted multiple times. And I think this is very much a 1 + 1 = 2. I think that Amori is going to get this fight to the ground and ultimately find the submission. Polyana Viana isn't necessarily all that good on the feet either, so I don't think that Amori is going to be that tested on the feet and have that much trouble in terms of closing the distance to get the takedowns. Give me Amori to find the first or second round finish on the ground by submission. And next up, we have Cameron Simon taking on Malcolm Wellmaker. And Malcolm Wellmaker making his UFC debut in this particular matchup. He did look impressive on the Contender Series, getting that knockout win. And obviously untested inside the UFC, so we'll see what he's got on Saturday in this particular matchup. And he's going to be taking on Cameron Simon, training partner of Dricus du Plessis, the current middleweight champion. And to be honest with you, I'm going to lean in Simon's direction here, not because of the fact that I think that Simon is going to be head and shoulders better than Wellmaker. I just trust the fact that he's obviously UFC tested. He's got wins inside the UFC. I think he's the more well-rounded fighter. However, I do think Wellmaker does have the power on the feet. I think he's probably the better athlete as well. A little bit older as well, a little bit more developed in terms of him being a man. I think Cameron Simon still has a little bit of development to do, not just on his skill set, but overall with his athleticism and his size and strength. But I am going to lean to Simon here to bounce back after his KO loss to Peyton Talbot I would not be surprised if Wellmaker did win this one. That's why it is only a red level confidence pick here. Yeah, I'm going to go with Cameron Simon to get back in the win column here and welcome Wellmaker to the UFC. And next up, we have Olatong Haley taking on Damian Blackshear, and confident pick here for Blackshear. Blackshear's looked fantastic recently in his last few fights. I think Blackshear comes in here, he mixes in the striking against Olatong Haley, and I think he ultimately gets this fight to the ground and controls him on the ground, either to win a very confident decision or he finds a finish on the ground, whether that be ground and pound or submission. He's looked fantastic so far, Blackshear. He's looked very well-rounded. He pressures, which I really like, and I think, honestly, in this particular matchup, he'll probably find the submission. That's kind of been his forte so far within the UFC. One of the things I do like about Blackshear, especially in this matchup and inside most of his fights in the UFC, he softens his opponent up with ground and pound before going for the submission. I don't see any reason not to pick him in this matchup here, and he is a confident pick as one of our picks here for UFC Fight Night. Prates versus Garry. And if you haven't already, ladies and gentlemen, and you enjoy the short form content, hit that like and subscribe button as we move on to the next fight. And next up, we have Chris Gutierrez taking on John Castaneda. And I'm only going to lean here to John Castaneda, not a confidence pick here. It's very hard for me to trust Chris Gutierrez. Chris Gutierrez really just fights behind the jab and throws the low kick. So a lot of the time he is moving backwards. He is circling. He is not necessarily throwing big power shots to get his opponent's respect. So his opponents tend to walk him down, which isn't a good visual to the judges. And one of the things I do notice about John Castaneda, although he can be reckless, he does come forward. He does pressure. He does like to get in his opponent's face. He will make it dirty. He can throw volume and power shots. So give me John Castaneda here. I think even though he is necessarily a little bit smaller, I think, in this matchup, and this fight has been rescheduled multiple times, I think John Castaneda comes in here. I think he pressures. I think he wins a decision here against Chris Gutierrez based on the damage element of MMA rules. I think he comes in here and I think he's able to land the bigger shots, landing the hooks. And I think Chris Gutierrez just really throws the jab and the low kick like he always does. Not a confident pick, as John Castaneda can be reckless, can get caught at times. But like I said, going to pick John Castaneda here in this particular matchup, as it is hard for me to trust Chris Gutierrez. And next up, we have Evan Elder taking on Gage Young. And Gage Young taking this fight on about a week's notice, replacing Evan Elder's former opponent. And when you look through Gage Young's record, honestly, it is very poor. Only 24 years of age. Most of the people that he has beaten don't even have a winning record themselves. So I think this is too much, too soon. Although Evan Elder isn't a world beater, he does have nice wrestling. He can mix that in. He does have respectable striking, but I think, honestly, the wrestling here is going to be what's going to get it done. I think he's going to look to get this fight to the ground. I think he's going to look to beat up his opponent in Young. I think Evan's cardio is going to be better as well, seeing he's had a full camp for this one, and he's a confident pick here for Elder to get it done. Maybe on the ground and pound, second round for me. And I just don't think that Young is particularly good. I think that he's not even UFC. I think he's just stepping in to take an opportunity to fill out the replacement here. Evan Elder all the way here, confident pick. And next up, we have Matt Schnell taking on Jimmy Flick. And this is a tricky one because if you're trusting Matt Schnell as a betting favorite, I wish you luck. But I think, honestly, this matchup comes down to the game plan and the fight IQ of Matt Schnell, which we've not seen too much of in terms of having good performances. He does get finished a lot inside the UFC. And Jimmy Flick, although he doesn't necessarily have the striking, he does have fantastic jiu-jitsu skills. We've seen him get flying arm bars in the past or flying triangles in the past. The guy is an absolute jiu-jitsu wizard. We have seen him be a little bit chinny. We have seen him knocked out, which is where I expect Matt Schnell to keep this fight on the feet. I think that if Matt keeps the fight on the feet, it's his to win. Not necessarily a high-level confident pick here for me, because if Matt Schnell decides he wants to wrestle, he wants to get this fight to the ground, I think Jimmy Flick is live for a submission. I like that as a bet this week. Jimmy Flick by submission, it's going to be plus 300 at least. I think Matt Schnell's fight IQ can let him down at times. Keep this fight on the feet, Matt Schnell. I think it's where you're going to have the advantage. You can probably find the chin of Flick in this matchup. Not a confident pick here for Matt Schnell, but I am going to go with him for this week's card. And next up, we have Ikram Aliskerov taking on Andre Muniz. And I think Aliskerov gets it done here. Andre Muniz, obviously another jiu-jitsu wizard. Very nice ground game. Very good at getting control on the ground. Body triangle. He'll keep you there the entire round. But I don't think he's got the wrestling to keep Ikram up against the fence or get him down to the ground here to implement his jiu-jitsu. I think Ikram's going to have this big striking advantage. I think he's going to find the chin of Muniz. Although Muniz's striking has looked improved, you can tell that it's not necessarily his main tool or his main skill set. I think Ikram, coming off of that KO loss to Robert Whittaker, I don't think that's necessarily a bad loss because Whittaker is obviously a higher level, still credentialed middleweight. And honestly, I think Ikram will probably put him out on the feet with a knockout. His other loss also comes to Khamzat Chimaev, so not necessarily bad people to lose to for Ikram. I think he bounces back here. I think he should be a confident pick, but we don't know how his chin's going to hold up after that vicious knockout from Robert Whittaker. But I think he gets it done here as a fairly confident pick for me. Maybe make this one a green, or we'll change that one to a green for you guys. But Ikram, to get it done, confident pick. I think he finds the chin and keeps the fight on the feet. And next up, we have Randy Brown taking on Nicholas Dolby. And I'm going with Randy Brown here. I think in his last fight with Brian Battle, I think he was a little bit unlucky. I think the judges might have screwed him a little bit here. Obviously, very long for the division. Great striking, great in the clinch. Has nice knees, nice elbows. And I think he might find the chin here of Nicholas Dolby. Nicholas Dolby, obviously 40 years old at this point, but is able to push a pace. His main weapon is his cardio. He likes to clinch up against the fence. He likes to look for takedowns. I don't think he's going to get any takedowns against Randy Brown. I think the only real weapon that Dolby's going to have here is holding Randy Brown up against the fence. I think if Brown can keep this fight at range, he's going to be able to use his striking. He's going to be able to use his knees, his elbows. I think he's going to be able to throw a jab, throw the low kick, and really use all of his different weapons here on the feet to be able to find the chin of Dolby. And Dolby is durable. He's never been finished. He does have a pretty nice wrestling, but I just don't see him being able to corral Randy Brown up against the fence and get the length of Randy Brown to the ground. It's pretty difficult to take down tall opponents. I don't think he's going to have a whole lot of success here against Randy Brown. I think Randy Brown's a confident pick this week. He's got the striking advantage, and I think he keeps this one standing and wins probably by knockout. And next up, we have Michel Pereira taking on Abus Nurmagomedov. And I originally flip-flopped on this one. I thought I might go with Michel Pereira, but I'm actually going to go with Abus. I think Abus knows the game plan in this particular matchup. I think he needs to come in here. I think he needs to do what his last name suggests, and he needs to wrestle. If he comes in and he uses a wrestling-heavy game plan, especially in the first round, he can tire out Michel Pereira, which has been proven that it works time and time again. Michel Pereira's gas tank is pretty much zero if you get him out of the first round. So I think Abus comes in here. I think he wrestles. I think he tires out Pereira, and I think ultimately he can maybe find a finish on the ground, maybe late in the third round like he did against Bruno Ferreira in his last fight. I think Michel Pereira is definitely live inside the first round. Abus has definitely been known to kind of quit in fights, but one of the things I did notice about Abus doing tape study this week is he looked very physically dominant in his last fight. He looked in physically the best shape I've ever seen him in. I thought he looked very impressive. I think he could push a pace in this fight, especially early, and really test the gas tank of Michel Pereira. I think he comes in. I think he wrestles, but it is hard to be confident in Abus, as we've seen him drop fights in the past and get chinned. And Michel Pereira is definitely always live to finish his opponent. So not necessarily a confident pick here for Abus, but I am going to lean in his direction this week. And next up, we have Giga Chikadze and David Onama, as I mentioned earlier, is fighting on this card. And I'm going to go to David Onama here. I think that he has all the skills to beat a guy like Giga Chikadze. And I think Giga Chikadze is too one-dimensional for MMA in 2025. He's pretty much just a kickboxer. I think the game plan for him, as shown by Calvin Kattar, and also shown in his last previous fight against Arnold Allen, is you have to pressure him, use your boxing, and really just corral him. If you corral the kicker, he can't get off the kicks. David Onama is the perfect skill set for that. I think he mixes in takedowns here. I think that works for him as well. David Onama stays very composed in there. He likes to throw heavy leather with his hands, and I think he might even put Giga Chikadze out. I think he's got very, very heavy hands, David Onama. He likes to box. He doesn't throw a ton of kicks, and he has fantastic cardio now that he's training at elevation. So I really like David Onama in this matchup. The reason I only have him as a yellow or medium confidence is because Giga is always live with his kicks. David Onama has been clipped in the past by much lesser strikers than guys like Giga Chikadze. However, I do think David Onama can come in here, pressure and corral the kicker, and ultimately win the fight with his hands and pressure. And I feel fairly confident in him this week. However, like I mentioned, Giga is always live for that Giga kick. And next up, we have Anthony Smith taking on Ming Yang Zhang. And Honestly, I can't trust Anthony Smith at this point. I think he should have retired a long time ago. And I don't necessarily hate Anthony Smith, but I think Zhang is very live inside the first round. He's a born finisher. I think it's all of his 18 wins have come inside the first round. The guy has decent grappling as well, which a lot of people don't know about. When I was doing tape study, I did see him get taken down. He was able to reverse position, take the back, and control the guy's back, and then beat the guy up on the ground ultimately to find a submission victory. So this guy has grappling as well. I'm not worried about Anthony Smith's jiu-jitsu black belt. I think, honestly, though, I think this fight stays on the feet. I think Zhang finds the chin early of Smith. Smith gets rocked and dropped in almost every one of his fights now, and I think Zhang being a potent finisher on the feet, I think he's going to be able to find the chin of Smith and ultimately find the knockout here as well. So a very confident pick here for Zhang to get it done in the co-main event of this weekend's card. And last but by no means least, we have the main event, Garry taking on Carlos Prates. And confident pick here for me for Prates. I think Prates gets this done. He's the much better striker on the feet. I think Garry looks to clinch. He has shown improvements from fight to fight. He is definitely a student of the game, but I just can't get in the way of Carlos Prates and the fighting nerds. They've had a lot of success so far in the UFC. I don't see anything other than that continuing here. I think Carlos Prates can get it done on the feet, keep this fight standing, get off the fence, and basically find the kill shot on Garry. We've seen multiple fights now with Garry of much lesser opponents find the chin of Garry, and Carlos Prates is an absolute sniper. He's got great timing, great knees up the middle when he gets in the clinch, and ultimately I think he gets it done here, probably by KO or maybe by decision, but I like Carlos Prates in this matchup as the underdog and as the green pick this week in our main event for our quick picks video at the Ground and Pound podcast. And speaking of Ground and Pound podcast, the things to look out for on this channel coming up soon, like I mentioned at the start of the video, if you enjoy long drawn out breakdowns where we go through in detail the matchups, what we like to see, where they've been training, all the different details of the particular matchups in the fights, stay tuned for that as we have a full card breakdown between me and Carlos coming to you tomorrow every Wednesday for this particular event. And also our best bets video comes out on Fridays. Keep an eye out for that. I might move it to Thursday this week, Thursday or Friday. Keep an eye out for that for the best bets for this particular card, all live from Kansas City. And if you've enjoyed the short breakdowns, the quick picks video, and you want it to continue, hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate your love and support. Thank you for everything. Peace.